Welcome back to part 2 of solving quadratic equations. Right now we're going to be looking at factoring. Okay. Again, quadratic equations, just as a reminder, is something with an x squared in it. It could also have maybe like a 4x or something like that. And now it's also going to have an equal sign. That's what makes it an equation. Okay. Also, check out my little diagram. That's Columbus in 1492 sailing to America. All right, here we go. Today, right now, we're going to be looking at this middle column where we just have an x squared and an x, but no number at all. So I have 2x squared, negative 8x, 3x squared, 9x, something like that, okay? But no additional number. Now, I'm going to show you why we can't do it the same way as the first video where we just take a square root of both sides. And I'm going to use this as an example that x squared equals 4x. All right, if you try to take a square root of both sides here, you would get x equals the square root of 4x, but we don't know what the square root of 4x is. So as you start to kind of see these and see the methods that we do use, you'll understand why we can't use other methods that we know, okay? So we can't do that. We can't solve by square rooting. Let's take a look at what we can do. All right, there's our pretty work from last video. Right now we're going to look at x squared and an x, no other number. Here's our steps. Go ahead and write these down. First, we're going to set our equation equal to 0. Last video, we wanted something on both sides. Right now, we want everything on one side. Step 2, we're going to factor out a greatest common factor. Step 3, we're going to set each factor equal to 0, and we're going to solve each equation. Again, those are important. Make sure you have those down. All right. First equation, here we go. 3x squared plus 9x equals 0. Again, I have a x squared term and an x term, but no constant. Okay, can't take a square root of both sides because of that x. So first thing I'm going to do is it's set equal to 0. I'm going to pull out the greatest common factor of each term. So I'm going to look at the numbers here, a 3 and a 9, and pull out the greatest number that divides into both of those. So I'm going to pull out a 3. Okay. Now, I'm also going to look at an x squared and an x and take out the greatest number of x's that I can. Okay. I have 2 x's in the first part, but only 1 x, so I can only pull out 1 x. All right, and now I'm pulling it out. I'm going to have everything else left inside. Okay, this is the opposite of distributing. Like if you were distributing this 3x, you wouldn't be multiplying to each term, multiplication. But because we're going backwards and pulling this 3x out, it's like dividing each term by 3x. Okay. So let's go ahead and divide. All right, I'm pulling out that 3x from 3x squared. So I'm basically dividing. 3 divided by 3 is 1. X squared divided by x is just x. All right. Now, 9x divided by 3x, 9 divided by 3 is just 3. X divided by x is nothing, so I have plus 3 equals to 0. All right. Now, you can double check your work. Again, if we multiply this back in, 3x times x is 3x squared, plus 3x times 3 is 9. Hey, we get that original thing, right? So it's good to double check our work, but we want it actually in factored form, okay? Again, factored means multiplication. I've turned that whole thing into 3x times x plus 3, okay? And this factoring is going to help us because step 3 says set each factor equal to 0. What that means is I'm going to take 3x and I'm going to set it equal to 0. And I'm going to take x plus 3 and set it equal to 0. If I solve these are going to give me my two values of x that make this equation true, that make this equation equal to 0. So for the first one here, divide both sides by 3. I get x equals to 0. Second one, I'm just going to subtract 3 from both sides. I get x equals to negative 3. All right, there's my two solutions. It's always good to check your answers, but if I plugged back into this guy right here, when x equals 0, we would have this first part would be 0, and the second part would be 3. So 0 times 3 equals 0. Now, if I plug in x equals -3, this would be -9 times 0 equals 0. So the goal of setting each factor equals to 0 is if any of these factors equal to 0, it's going to make this equation equal to 0. So just remember that when you factor something and you have something times something equals 0, you set each of those somethings equal to 0. All right. Number 2, let's take a look here. We have an x squared and an x. I'm going to factor this by taking out a greatest common factor, but I cannot do that until I have it equals to 0. So I'm going to move this 8x to the other side by adding 8x. So I have 2x squared plus 8x equal to 0. All right, I'm pulling out a GCF between 2 and 8. My greatest common factor that I can pull out is a 2. Don't say 8 because 2 goes into 8, but I can't pull out an 8 from 2, okay? So it has to be smaller than both of those numbers. All right, I have 2 x's and an x. The most number of x's I can pull out is an x. And again, if I pull this out, it's like division. If you need, go ahead and write this out. 2x squared divided by 2x is just x. 8x divided by 2x is just 4. So x plus 4. All right. Hey, we factored. I have something times something equals to 0. Set each of those to 0. We get 2x equals 0. X plus 4 equals to 0. That means x equals to 0. X equals to -4. Again, make sure you solve each of these equations. That sign's going to switch on you. And those are my 2 solutions. All right. Go ahead and try 1 or 2 on your own. And we got one more video after that.